All right, Big Man, today is Tuesday. It's February 1st. Welcome to the Dog Walk, presented by Barstool Sports. Here we are, Eddie, Chief, Tinfoil, History, World News, whatever the fuck you're looking for. It's all here.
It might be a little bit of a mix in all of them in this episode.
Mix.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have to address out of the gate, last Tuesday's episode seemed to caught the people by storm.
I've never had this much of a response to an episode that we've done. Like
crazy,
hundreds of DMs, like heartfelt DMs, really encouraging ones. So thanks to everybody that listened and said all the nice things. So
we appreciate it. I had people I personally know reach out.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I was like, well, yeah.
I don't think we set out to do anything.
No, not at all. Like we didn't even like.
Took 15 minutes.
We were
before.
pretty loose, yeah. And then like we just had very personal connections and very personal opinions on it. So
the student debt episode, we haven't even said it, but that is So if you haven't listened to it, maybe you want to go back and listen to it. But very well received episode. So thanks everybody for listening. And it's something that touches everybody. So it's not just you and I think it's everybody who's in the audience listening too.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So and here's the thing too, like obviously it's not the easiest things to find the topics for, but we're definitely interested in doing those type of things more, where we're both kind of like really locked in on that kind of thing. So if there's any kind of thought-provoking topic that you have and you kind of want our take and like whatnot on it, please reach out and we'd be happy to discuss something that we think makes sense.
Yeah, I think, and I said this to Ed, like that was one of my favorite episodes. I really enjoyed the NFT episode too. Like if I could do a podcast, it would just be that, just talking about something and kind of going off on tangents sometimes, and just trying to come up with new ideas and think deeply about stuff. So I loved those episodes, and glad you guys seem to like them too.
For sure. So today's episode, though, like you said, it's a triple head of conspiracy, world news, and everything. I mean, it's got it all as far as the Tuesday
climate
episode.
change.
Yeah.
So this, I guess we'll just say it, like this is China and Russia are collaborating on what they're calling, kind of like flippantly, it's got like a real name, but they're calling it like the Arctic Silk Road. And it's this shipping lane that will take off from like, near the economic centers of China, which is they have a port there. Then it goes around, the Korean Peninsula, around those Arctic Russia ones, and then through the strait with Alaska, and then all the way across, kind of hugging the coast of Russia and Siberia, in like by Buddy the Elf up in fucking North Pole, and then down into Europe that way through like the Baltic Sea, around like Finland and Norway and those places, and ending up in Europe and in Netherlands, Rotterdam and Germany and places like that. And
so it's up and left for the people that are trying to understand how.
If you're looking at a world map,
like imagine China, you just go up and you go left to Russia.
Correct.
And Europe.
Yeah.
Whereas like the other thing that I'm not fucking well versed in world news and shit, as you could tell if you listen to the show. But the difference is how I know this is how I always say, oh, okay, that was the Suez Canal is the opposite way.
Yeah.
And that's where that boat got stuck last summer.
Right. So
we did a show on that.
Exactly. Yeah. So that boat got stuck, backed up. That was like the first. I know they're not definitely related, but in my head, all the supply chain issues that we've had here in this country and I'm sure all over the world, it started that day. Like that day that boat got stuck. I know there's a million other reasons, but in my head, it's like, well, ever since that boat got stuck, we've had a hard time getting products in here. But yeah, so that Arctic route, so if you're going from, let's say, Beijing, Shanghai, all the way around to Europe, if you're shipping goods or whatever else, that takes you 19 days to do that trip. Okay, to go around into like the Arctic Circle route. And if you were going to go the Suez Canal route,
which is the traditional route.
The traditional used to be the fastest route. So you go down around India, up, through the Red Sea into the Suez Canal, across the Mediterranean into Europe. So either into Italy or you go around Spain and you go into the port of Rotterdam, which is one of the busiest ports in the world, definitely the busiest in Europe. And that would take 48 days. So you're talking like triple the amount of time that this would save.
48 days compared to 19.
Yeah, and
It's a huge fucking difference.
if you're going the northern route, while there are some issues like being fucking freezing on the boat in the ocean, like the whole ride is deadly as catch, no pirates. Like you're not going through around like the Horn of Africa, things like that. Yeah. So in some ways, it's shorter, it's more economical, it's safer, and this is not like some small project. Like Putin said that Russia is personally investing. I thought the number was fake. He said it in a press conference. It was 10 trillion rubles, which is the Russian form of currency, the ruble, which comes out to be about $126 billion in US dollars. So, and it's Russia's doing that. China's putting a ton of money in. They have a communications cable so they can like make phone calls and do shit that didn't exist before that they laid down. Just the fiber cable cost $889 million to lay that cable down. But, you invest money to get something out, and this is going to make Russia and like use of this seaway very, very financially. It's going to add, they said they expect it to add 2% a year to their GDP.
And you should say the reason why this is like a new thing is because it was all glaciered over before.
It was
couldn't get through.
For the entirety of human history, it has been unpassable. And now it's not. That's like a benefit, theoretically, of global warming, for Russia at least, is that they're able to do that. They're able to go up, and it saves so much time. Like the route is shorter, but it's also like this is a thing in air travel too. Like if you fly to Europe, you don't go in a straight line. You go kind of up and over the poles and use the rotation of the Earth, and like the Earth is, since it's a sphere, it's skinnier up there, so it's just smaller distance to travel, and then you come down. And so like it makes a lot of sense. But like this project is so fucking huge. Okay. So it's going to take 400,000 workers to put this whole thing together and then keep it together. So they're building 15 towns that just did not exist before. 15 of these little villages. There are 2 major airports, trains everywhere, new highways everywhere. So it's like they're building ports in places that no one has ever stepped foot in, because it's like, why the fuck would anyone live? And I'm talking like for 20,000 years. Like no one has really lived up there, and because it's been frozen and it's still very cold and terrible. Like, can you imagine having to work up there? Like, how much would they have to pay you to work?
Dude, I don't know if there's an amount of money.
So that is,
I really don't. That's so cold and it's just so miserable, and there's nothing
darkness forever. There's nothing there. Like I remember hearing this story. I can't remember where I heard it, but it was this and White Sox Dave's dad did this actually too, where he, right out of high school, he went out to Wyoming and was working in a mine in Wyoming. Well, there's people who work. Oh, it's my buddy. My buddy's like a friend of my friend. So I have a friend from Calgary, and that's out there in Alberta, and in the north is where all of Canada's oil is, and it's in this particular type of shale in northern Alberta. But it gets to be like 40 below zero Fahrenheit. And it's like, yeah, you can work outside. You have to work outside. You're working on these, on the pipelines and stuff. But you can only be outside for like maximum 25, 30 minutes before you have to go in because you get frostbite. So like you can only work in like 30-minute shifts. Okay. And that's northern Alberta. This is way up more north of that, way colder. And so it's like, so what? You're building a fucking town. The amount of money that they'd have to pay is crazy. And that's another thing they don't talk about when they talk about like the men versus women wage gap thing. It's like men are the ones doing these jobs, and they have to pay a lot of money to get somebody to go, drill oil up in northern Alberta or live on the fucking Arctic Circle.
But women could do it too, right?
They could do it, but 9 times out of 10, they're just like, that's fucking insane. Like they're smarter. They're smarter. They won't just chase the dollar. And so, yeah, I don't know if Russia would let women do it. I'm sure they'll have some women up there. But that is typically the case, that men will move for work and they'll do like hard labor outside and like risk their lives in order to get more money, where women are just more sensible, I guess. But that is something. So that's how big this project is. And it's already starting to work. So they're not even close to being done with this project. They're hoping to be full capacity by 2035. But since they really started using this cargo lane, which did not exist before, cargo traffic is up 80% since 2017. 80% in 5 years. That's crazy. I almost said 3 years because my brain is still stuck in the past. Like, it's like, how could 2017 be 5 years ago? That doesn't seem right. But it must be right. But it is right.
It's factually correct.
It's factually correct.
Mathematically correct as well.
Mathematically correct. So, and this is something they've been banking on. Like, they, I remember this when it happened because I'm like, that's fucking weird. But they sent like this submarine and this diver down to the bottom of the ocean in the Arctic Circle at the North Pole and planted a little underground or underwater Russian flag, being like, we own this shit. So... and everyone's like, oh, like, cool trick. But they kind of like took it seriously. Like, they're noticing that, that we're having this global warming and they're going to benefit from it. And one of the ways they're benefiting from it is this trade route. And it allows them to ship things from China. So China likes it, right? So they can ship all their products right to every door in Europe. Russia loves it because now they have a more efficient way of getting all the things that cause global warming, fossil fuels that they have in spades and natural gas and oils and other things into every doorstep of Europe themselves. So, which is something they're already doing right now. And they had a controversial thing. And a lot of people are like, well, why is Biden, closing off our pipelines? We have these rising gas prices. And meanwhile, Putin and Russia, have you heard of this pipeline? It's like it's called like the Nord V2 or something like that.
This is Russia?
This is Russia. So they're putting in a big underwater pipeline that goes from some port in Russia and it goes all the way down into Germany. And right now they have a single pipeline and they're putting it's under construction right now. If you watch videos of the construction of this Nord V2, they have this massive, massive ship. And so it's like they build a piece of the pipe and then like lower it down to the water. And then some places it's so deep that they can't like connect the next piece. So they have to raise the pipe up from the bottom, fit it with the next piece of pipe, which is, huge, and then slowly lower it down at the bottom of the ocean. And that's just to put natural gas in there. And that the current capacity for that pipeline, it can heat every home, power every home in Europe, or not every home in Europe. 26 million homes is what that can do now. And they think that the combination of this new Silk Road that will allow them to more efficiently get oil and gas from northern Siberia into this other pipeline, and because now the new one, they're basically tripling the output. You're going to be able to have exponentially more, like Russia is going to be like thought of in the same way that these Middle Eastern countries are in terms of natural gas, like where they're just like, they're an energy giant because they've been sitting on this ocean. Their country is so fucking big. Their country is like, I think it's something like 14 time zones. Okay. Like that's
absurd.
It's insane from coast to coast, right? It's just like it's just, you can't even fathom how big this country is. And they've had so much, they're sitting on all this natural gas and all this oil from all these places that they couldn't get to it before because it was frozen. Now that it's melting, they're like, they got dollar signs in their eyes in a big way. And I think, they're making their mark on the world, right? They act as if right now is like this time to move. And you're seeing it like with this, this situation in Ukraine is kind of getting out of control a little bit, where they're like amassing 100,000 troops at the border. And, they're supposedly, there was an article in the paper in London saying that, they uncovered this plot that Russia has to install a pro-Russian leader. And at first it was just, and like people are freaking out because initially Biden's response was like, yeah, if they go in, like, we'll see. And it was like kind of measured. And then he got killed in the press for that. Like, oh, like, you look like such a weakling. We don't know what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. So then, they reverse course. And Jen Psaki, who is the press secretary, she was urging all Americans to get out of Ukraine. And it's like, what? What do you like? That's like a very serious, like evacuate the country.
Yeah, big time.
Okay. And then they also committed to putting 8,500 troops, sending it to Eastern Europe, which is it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the same amount we had towards the end of our occupation of Afghanistan too. Mm-hmm. So it's not like nothing. And that's in addition to all the NATO forces there.
Hey, let's take a quick break here because we got to talk about Fuzzy, Chief. Chief, you're a dog owner, and you know how important a service like Fuzzy is.
Yeah, Fuzzy's super important.
Very important because Fuzzy is a telehealth service for pet parents that offers 24/7 access to personalized pet care from veterinarian professionals, which is, I mean, you know that 2 a.m. You wake up, George is barfing, and you're like, the instant panic.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's just insane.
It is. I actually went through that again this morning with him.
Did you?
So I was laying in bed. I could hear, like, I was not ready to get up. It was still dark out. It was like 5:45, something like that. I hear the dog, little nails on the hardwood, clip clapping around. And then 10 minutes go by, and I hear him puking. It's like, oh, fuck. What's he puking? And he has this black stuff coming out of in his puke. So I get on Fuzzy, and I'm like, he's puking. His energy seems, normal, and they kind of talk you through it. And they're like, did he get into anything weird? I don't know what this black stuff would be. He ate a scarf. He ate like this. It was like a fuzzy material, kind of furry looking scarf. Ate it, puked it up. He's fine. But it saved me a trip to the ER hospital because I was able to communicate with somebody about what was going on.
So that's huge. That's great.
Yeah.
So from everyday questions to the middle of the night emergencies, Fuzzy has the answers pet parents need through live chat and virtual vet consultations available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Fuzzy can answer your pet questions, big and small, urgent and every day. Fuzzy can also recommend the exact right products for your pet, all of which are handpicked by their established team of veterinarian professionals and available at discounts exclusive to Fuzzy members. From getting your pet's diet just right to meeting their middle-of-the-night needs to finally figuring out what makes their breath smell that way, nothing is too big or small for a quick Fuzzy call. So right now, Fuzzy is offering our listeners a free 7-day trial membership. Go to yourfuzzy.com/dog to sign up today. That's a free 7-day trial at YOURFUZZY.com/dog. And for a limited time, Fuzzy is also offering a special discount of $20 off any of your pet products needs. That's pet meds, supplements, food, and more with promo code DOG. That's yourfuzzy.com/dog for your free trial of Fuzzy with access to 24/7 personalized pet care and vet-recommended products. Go get some Fuzzy. Go use the service. All right, let's get back into the episode.
And then you had people are like, what are you doing? Okay, so it's like, what's going on here? The head of the EU, the top diplomat at the EU for Ukraine, it was like, everybody just chill out. Like, there's no need to like over dramatize what's going on here. Like, don't do it. Don't worry about it. Okay. And the United States, so they're basically saying like, hey, United States, like, shut up. Like, everything's fine. Like, don't like escalate this situation further for whatever reason. Like, everything's fine. So there's 129 there's diplomats from 129 countries currently in Ukraine for various reasons. There are 4 countries that said you should pull your people out. Us, England, Australia, and one other. I'm blanking on the last one, but it's like Germany's still in. The head of the EU is like, yeah, like, don't, like, everything's fine. The head of Ukraine diplomats are like, everybody just stop. Like, please stop with this tough talk about what's going on with Ukraine, because you're just making everything fucking more tense and worse. The last thing you want is like, it feels like a little bit like the Cuban Missile Crisis, where it's like, hey, like, if you invade, then we're going to have to respond, and on I go. And like, where does it stop? Well, there's no place for it to stop, because like each country have nuclear weapons. So like, are you going to go to war with Russia over Ukraine? Like, what are we doing? But it does seem like everybody in our government and the Russian government are talking in a way that makes it seem like that is like we're escalating towards that end. And to me, like, I just don't care enough about Ukraine. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care about Ukraine. I want everybody to be like, I don't want to go to war for Ukraine as a country. I think that seems absurd.
Be careful now. You might get that Warriors owner treatment.
I blogged that actually.
Did you?
The Chamath. Yeah. No, I blogged that. And that to me is like, that to me is a little bit different where you
because those people are actually in
prison camps and shit. And like, and it's based upon their religion and their race. Like that's fucked up to me. And, and
fuck
yeah. And that's something that like, hey, like we should be talking about that a lot more seriously. I don't want to go to war with China over that either, but there's got to be diplomatic pressures and economic pressures that you could put on people to be like, this is not right. And, but we're talking way more tough about Russia and Ukraine than we ever did about China, which I thought was odd as well. Because it's they're in the same sphere of influence theoretically, like Russia and China. They're working together on this. The other thing that ties back to this a little bit, because China's putting so much money into these Russian ports, it sounds a lot like the same Belt and Road initiative that they're using against these other smaller countries. They're like, hey, like actually we're taking that. Sorry, Djibouti, like we're taking that port back, and now we have our largest naval base in the world outside of China is in Djibouti in the Horn of Africa where all the oil is, but it sounds like they're doing that same like strategy to Russia, but like Russia doesn't necessarily need their money for that. But so it's like, they're just like working together.
What would happen if those two went head to head?
Russia and China?
Yeah.
In a war?
Well, just like if they started, strong arming Putin and Russia like that, I wonder.
I think Putin, let's see what it says. China versus Russia military. I think China, I'm pulling it up. So China's got a bigger air force. I'm sorry. Russia's got a bigger air force. Russia's got a bigger military, but China just has way more people, and China spends way more money. So I don't know, but both of those are nuclear powers. So theoretically, they both lose because they just shoot the nukes at each other, and then it's not just them; it's everybody fucking else because it's nuclear war.
Big time escalation.
Big time escalation, and that's like the other thing about I said I don't care. You know who else doesn't care?
Who?
France. Okay, so there was a poll conducted that said 53% of French people oppose war if a NATO nation, so like you have this North Atlantic Treaty Organization that was set up after World War, I think it was in like 1953 or something like that, but it was after World War II when the Cold War was like really ramping up, and it's like we need to like get everybody on the same page where it's like, hey, if you attack a NATO country, all of NATO is against you. So it was a way to kind of like keep Russia from invading further, and like, they had taken over Czechoslovakia and Poland and all these they had their like satellite nations, and it's like, hey, it stops right there, because if you take one step into Germany, it's over, and into West Germany, and so they when the Berlin Wall came down, our Secretary of State and Russia was breaking apart. Our Secretary of State was this guy named James Baker. He said, we will not move NATO 1 inch east. Well, we didn't do that. We didn't live up to that at all. Like we let Estonia is like right on the border of Russia, Lithuania, Latvia, all those countries got like that. Like, hey, you're in NATO now. And it was always it's like a known thing. You attack United States, Canada, England, France, Germany, any of these NATO nations, all of us are going to war against you. It's like an automatic trigger. Like you have to, like that's part of the NATO agreement. And Ukraine was never admitted into NATO. So now you have people, 60% of Germans feel that way, 53% of the French feel that way. Who knows what Canada, United States think. I don't even know how many Americans could point to Ukraine on a map. Could you?
I mean, now that we've talked so much about them.
Yeah. Okay. Harry, could you?
Before the podcast, I couldn't have.
Okay.
No, don't get me wrong. I would not have the best idea, but I have a general idea of where it is.
Over by Poland and Russia and all those places over there. But I feel like, so if you're like, wait, we're going to go to war for Ukraine? No, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not like, I don't think anybody would be on board with that. But it does feel like that's the talk. And then maybe it's maybe part of the reason why everybody's talking so tough is because Russia and China are working together, and Russia is really trying to assert themselves economically through these pipelines and through this new Silk Road. And they are, for the first time, because they've never, the reason we won the Cold War more than anything was the dollar, is that, you know, we were this mighty, like the top economy in the world, and we could just outspend them, and we could print more money, and we could use the dollar as a weapon, and we created new technologies, and they just couldn't keep up. So they kept trying to spend like militarily, and put their money into those certain things, and then we were just like, well, we're just going to spend more, and that, you know, and then eventually, like, because they just did not have the economy that we had, we were able to like basically win the Cold War. And have the Soviet Union collapse. And people, like, the other thing, like, Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union. There's all sorts of people in Ukraine that speak Russian, identify as Russians, but they're living in Ukraine. So it's like, like, maybe we should let them determine that themselves. And then if you know your history, you know what that sounds a lot like. Our old guy Adolf. So Hitler did the same thing, where he's like, yeah, you know, like, those Czech people, they're really actually Germans. They want to be Germans. Same thing with Austria. They want to be part of us. And some of them did. And, you know, like, he took over, you know, Czechoslovakia without firing a single shot. And same thing with Austria. They just walked into Austria, like, we're in charge now, and everybody got on board. And so if that's not quite to that extreme in Ukraine with Russians, but there are. So it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, they want to be Russians anyway. Let Putin go in there. I'm not fighting for them. But then you like remember like that's how Hitler got started. Like, there's that scene in The Godfather where they got Michael Corleone is talking to Clemenza, and he's like, you know, we really should have stopped Hitler at Munich. Like, that should have been it. And it wasn't it. And it just goes a little bit further and a little bit further until it's gone too far. And so it's like, I don't know what the right answer is, but it seems like things are going the wrong way on this deal. And I don't know what the right answer is, but it's a little scary. And I keep going back to that Strauss-Howe. Like, what will be the domino?
Yeah.
Like, no one thought World War I would start with some fucking prince in Sarajevo getting shot. Next thing you know, we got a global crisis for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And you just never know.
I mean, dude, the big thing though, you might have said it, but like that fact that they could capitalize off global warming, that's like the conspiracy part of the show. It's like,
and maybe that's why they're trying to increase oil and gas production, you know, and they, you know, they're kind of in bed with Germany in a big way now. You know, Germany, like, they were going to be the green country, right? Like, there were all these op-eds, you know, in the beginning, maybe in like 2014, something like that, about, hey, they're going to be the country that does the green revolution. They're getting off of all fossil fuels, like corn or coal rather, and it's going to be all green, wind farms, blah, blah, blah. So they shut down a lot of their nuclear plants, and they shut down a lot of their coal plants. And guess what happened? They ran out of energy. Like, energy prices went through the roof. They had some rolling blackouts. They had real problems. So what do? They ended up having to refire up their coal plants, because those are easier to restart than doing recommissioning a nuclear facility. And they had to chop down a bunch of forests to get to the coal that was underneath. So their whole green energy project, and then they had to cozy up with Russia. Hey, well, let's build this pipeline, get more of this shit in here.
Went backwards.
Because they just went backwards on it. So, you know, and they're, you know, now they have a real kind of strategic energy alliance, or dependence rather, on Russian fuel. So it's who knows like where the chips will fall, where it's like, hey, like Russia, they could be like, you know what, like, you guys, we're supplying, hey, Germany, you better get in fucking line on what our other international policy goals are, because if you don't, we're shutting your fucking lights off. And then what do you do?
Scary.
Very scary.
Scary.
And they just keep pumping this gas in there, which maybe keeps pumping the carbon emissions up, which melts more of that ice, which just gives them more territory in the Arctic to send more ships with oil, gas, and everything else, and make a lot of money on their different ports.
Damn it, we'll see. And if people want to watch this too, if they want more of a visual lesson, go to YouTube, type in why Russia is building an Arctic Silk Road.
They did great. It's like 8-minute video.
Yeah, 8-minute video, real short. It's from the B1M.
It's a great YouTube channel. Yeah, I blogged a few things. Like they do really cool things about stadiums. I love like stadium construction projects and things like that. So they did a great one on like the Raiders Stadium, great one on LA State, SoFi. Very cool YouTube page.
Yeah, check that out if you want to learn a little more context or just see it in visualization form. But all right, Chief, thank you. Thank you everybody for listening. That's it for today. We will see you all tomorrow.